Hello YouTube community, my name is Dave and this is Do It Yourself with Dave. Tips for the practical homeowner. Today we're going to be talking about installing a ceramic floor tile in a bathroom. And I'm making this video out of appreciation for all of the expertise I've gained through watching many YouTube videos to save myself literally thousands of dollars in contractor expenses. So today we're going to be looking at installing these large 18-inch square ceramic tile. And I want to show you the complete process involved in this project. That is, what goes into the planning and of a project like this. What tools and materials will you need? What preparations do you need to make to the floor? What layout is needed on the floor and what considerations should be made before you begin? I'm going to talk about rules for setting the tile, thin set, mixing guidelines, back buttering tiles, troweling out the thin set, tips in keeping things clean, and placing the tile and using a leveling system to make sure the tiles are all in the same plane. And then I'm going to show you how to cut out for a toilet hole in the floor. And then also grouting. So this is going to be the entire process from beginning to end. I'm going to stop and start the video along the way. I'm going to load this video with tips on making your job easier. We're going to talk about what tools to use. So I hope that this will be helpful for you. And let's get started. Hi everyone, we're back. And we're going to talk about tools now, okay? These are some tools that you will want to have on hand to do your tiling job. The first I would like to show you is called a chisel scraper. It's a very heavy-duty scraper with a very sharp edge that's useful for bringing up the old material and scraping down the floor to prepare for tiling. Then we have a multi-purpose tool that is used to cut off casing. I will be demonstrating that. They also make a blade, this is a saw blade, they also make a blade that's used for scraping, and it basically does what this does. I didn't find it overly useful myself, but you can use that. Then a metal straight edge. This is part of a set that together makes up 100 inches of length, but I'm just going to use the 4-foot section about. Eye protection, hearing protection, a framing square, tile saw. I'll be demonstrating using the tile saw. This happens to be a Ryobi. It costs about $129, and I found it works just fine. Cuts the tile like a table saw cuts wood. I know there's other ways to cut tile, but this I found the best. This is an angle grinder with a blade that's used to cut ceramic tile. Very useful. A speed square. A trowel for the grout, not the grout, the thin set, sorry. And this is a 1/4 inch by 3/8 inch deep trowel, and that's what you need for the larger format tiles, in my case 18 inches. Then we have, we're going to use a leveling system for the tiles. I'll demonstrate that, but this is a little tool that's used for the levelers. Pinching tool, not sure what it's called. And then a smaller trowel like this, very useful. A grout float. This particular one has a rubber face. That's what you definitely want to have. They make cheaper ones that are just kind of a foam the whole way, but this one's got foam and then a nice rubber face on it. Then you're going to need buckets. I would say at least 2 5-gallon buckets for water. I like these shorter buckets for grout, to mix the grout and to mix the thin set in, because then as you reach in, it's not so deep. Scratchy pad. Sponges, they make sponges specifically for tiling. They're very rigid and they hold a lot of water. Get about 3 of those. They sell them in packs of 3. Gloves. I like these types of gloves. They have a rubber face on them. Tape measure. Utility knife. And a carpenter's pencil is very handy as well. Okay, the next step is going to be planning and preparing for the layout. Okay, YouTube, we're back. As I mentioned, this is going to be a complete process. So I would like to demonstrate how to remove a toilet in this short segment. And I've already removed the bolts, flange bolts, and I've taken off the water supply line after I made sure to turn off the supply. Okay, and then we need to flush the toilet. I already did that. So all the water goes out, and there's still a full bowl down here. So I'm going to use this brush, and I'm going to force as much water out of here down the drain as I can. And here we go. Okay, that actually worked out pretty good. The idea is we don't want water in here. It's likely to leak out a little bit, which isn't typically a big deal, but I like to get as much water out as I can. Also, to make it a little bit lighter, I'm going to take off the top. There we go. And then, like this, I'm going to do my my toilet lifting maneuver. I've already cut out the caulking around so it would be loose. And I'm going to straddle this baby like this. And I'm just going to pull straight up. Okay, here we go. Oh, there we go. Oh, that worked good. Okay, toilet is removed. Okay, I just realized I forgot to give you a little introduction to our bathroom project here. Here's the floor, goes up to a tub. I have removed the sink base, and it's on concrete. We happen to be in Orlando, Florida. This particular floor was interesting in that it had ceramic tile laid over vinyl tile. Really a bad idea, bad practice, but like it or not, that's what I got. And to prepare this floor, we got to take it down to the bare concrete, as you see I've done over here. So what I'm going to do is chip out the rest of this ceramic tile, which had been under the toilet, and take up the glue on the floor. I'm going to give you some tips about that. And remove the wax ring from the toilet. And what I'll do is show you a few tips along the way. Okay? So let's prepare this floor. Okay, to take up this tile, I'm going to just pry it up with a flat bar for starter and see how easy it comes. So I'll just try that. Not too bad, actually. Just came up as one whole piece. Oh, I'm loving that. Which shows you how poorly ceramic tile sticks to vinyl tile. Not very well at all. Which is also why it's a bad idea. And then I think I can probably just rip up the vinyl. Kind of water damaged. And then to get up this glue, I'm going to first of all scrape with this chisel scraper thingy and get up kind of the low-hanging fruit, the real easy stuff. Then I'm going to come back and get this area wet and scratch some more with this. Finally, I'm going to scrub it with my blue scratchy pad so that it looks as good as the rest of this floor. Okay, well, as you can see, that area cleaned up pretty nice. Still a little damp. Continuing the floor preparation, I cleaned out all the corners. I removed that bottom tile. I have the floor vacuumed up. And I like having the sheetrock up about a ½ inch. That's my preference. You can cut it if it isn't. And now I would like to demonstrate preparing the floor jambs with for cutting so the tile fits underneath them. So one moment while I set up. Okay, next I would like to demonstrate cutting out the door jamb material because we don't want to have to do fancy cuts on our tile around all these features. We want to put the tile underneath the jamb material. To do that, you use a multi-tool and a blade with a saw tip like that. Okay, and we're going to simulate the thickness of the thin set with this paint stick, about a ¼ inch thick. And then the tile material, here's a little scrap. And then I'm going to use this tool as a guide, and I'm going to just cut away the jamb material like this. Okay, I'll chip that out, and this will need to be done on both sides so that when I do my tiling, it'll slide right under there, and we'll fill in that little gap with some caulk. Okay? All right, so we'll see you soon. Okay, so here's our prepared floor. Nice and clean, concrete, ready for tile. One thing I forgot forgot to mention is that if you're tiling over plywood, it's generally a good idea to put down some cement board. I have a little scrap piece here to show you. It's basically cement, 1/2 inch thick about, and you can screw that down to the subfloor with, I think, like sheetrock screws, and get a nice base for your tile. I don't know that you can't put it over plywood, but you don't want to have the floor have any give or bounce to it because it'll crack your tiles. All right, next up is to do the layout for the floor. Okay, this is the dimensions of the floor I'm doing. I tend to like to make a little drawing of my areas first. But this little room is so small, I'm going to suggest another method. So I'll just put this aside. One thing I've seen done before is that people lay out the center line of the room, and then they set up the tiles so that there's an even space tile on the left and the right, top and bottom, maybe a 6-inch strip on each side. And that's one way to do it. I personally wouldn't recommend it. In this case, there's going to be a vanity over here and a toilet here. So most of this wall is going to be covered. So the main line of sight is going to be as you come in the door and probably looking down this particular grout joint right here. And since really no room is perfectly square, what I want to do is define a straight line here with a full tile that'll fit in this space. I'll have to cut tile for this area. And I would like to have a full tile starting from the back. That gives us maybe an 8 or 9 inch piece here that's going to terminate at the inside of this door jamb. And honestly, I won't have to do any cutting of tiles. These are all going to be full. I'll have to cut off this toilet here and then a couple of cut tiles along the ends. And no one likes cutting tiles. It takes time. It's kind of a pain, but a necessary evil. So what I want to do is define the tub as kind of a baseline to go by. And then I'm going to measure out and draw a straight line that's going to be my alignment for my first row of tiles. Okay? And I'm going to use my 4-foot straight edge as an edge to make sure it's all in alignment. I'm not shoving them tight to the tub, thinking that's perfectly straight. I'm just using that as a guideline, and then I'll measure out from that and make a straight line for my gauge. And then we'll go at 90 degrees to it to lay out another line, and I'll keep one line of grout straight as well, not counting on the wall to be perfectly 90 degrees to the tub, because it probably isn't. So that's going to be the plan. What I've done here is laid out tiles without any thin set. These are my spacers. They're also going to be used for the leveling system, and I'll demonstrate that in a bit. But I just laid my tiles out to kind of get a feel for the layout and decide where I want my tiles to be. I'm going to start toward the back and work toward the front. So that's my logic that goes into the layout of this room. It's really simple. I just got done with the bathroom, the master master bath that was in the shape of a letter Z. And I had to start way at the back and follow lines that are at 90 degrees to each other so that when I came out to the entry door, it all looked nice. More about that in a bit. Okay, I have the floor tiles laid in there about how I like them. We are about maybe a 1/4 inch gap from the tub. That will be filled with silicone caulk. I've put in my straight edge to confirm that all the tiles are nice and straight. They're still not glued down yet, right? They're just laying in there for space claim. And then I hold the tile out from the wall maybe a 1/4 inch or so, and that would be covered by base trim. Some people add quarter round on the base trim. I think that's a little overkill that you don't need to do. I leave that little gap in the back to use a pry bar to be able to adjust the tile, pry it away from the wall as needed. I want to show you a little bit more about this leveling system before we get into the putting the tiles down. So these little spacers go under the tile, and then the wedge gets placed under here, and all it does is bring two adjacent tiles in the same plane with each other, which is a very nice thing to have. It doesn't ensure that it's level in terms of, if you use a level on it with a spirit level, but it does ensure planarity between the tiles, and that's the advantage of these. And you leave these on as the thin set dries, and after it's dry, you pull out the wedge and you kick off these little plastic tabs, and they have a little thin area at the bottom where it breaks beautifully. So next we're going to be doing the mixing of the thin set and laying our tile. How exciting is that? Stay tuned. Okay, we are now at the mixing of the thin set step. Thin set's like the glue, if you will, that holds the tile to the concrete. And I have filled in my bucket about 2 inches of clean, cool water. Okay, so I'm going to add the thin set powder to the water, and not start with thin set powder in the bucket and add water to it. There's a strategy for that, behind that, and that is I can kind of titrate how much grout I'm putting in and get it to what they call about a peanut butter consistency. And I can get it mixed in there real nice without a lot of clumping. So you'll notice I'm not really measuring anything. I'm using a mixing tool, works really good, and a drill, battery drill. And I'm just going to slowly mix this together. Right now it's super soupy, obviously, but it at least doesn't have any clumps. All right, so I'm gonna add quite a bit more of this. I'm purposely adding less than I think I need so I can dial in the thickness. Still very soupy. I'm not spinning the drill real fast. Just enough to get it working. And I want to get all those clumps broken apart in there. And it just takes time, and you have to be patient. So how do you know when it's the thickness of peanut butter? Well, that's a great question. I don't really have an answer for that, except that when I trowel this material out in little 3/8 inch high, 1/4 inch wide rows, I want it to stand up and not sink away. So it has to be firm enough for that. And I think we're getting really close now. Definitely the chunks are going away, and I'm liking the consistency. It feels more peanut buttery. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more. And then we're going to call it good, okay? I like using the shorter buckets for the thin set because you don't have to reach so deep as if it were a 5-gallon bucket. This is looking really good now. Nice and creamy, no lumps. I think we're there. Okay, we're ready to lay our first tile. We're going to first back butter our tile. And this is something I learned from YouTube. There's lots of YouTube videos on how to do this, but it's easy. You just plop on some thin set, plop, plop, and you spread it around like that, plop. And I don't care how thick it's going on right now. I just want to have full coverage, plop, on all the tile. And the reason we do this is you don't want to have any part of the tile that doesn't have thin set underneath it supporting it. Okay? So I'll plop that on like that. Then I take my notch trowel and the edge that doesn't have notching, and I just spin that down like that. And that is a back buttered tile. Okay? Now I'm just going to set this off to the side for the moment. And then I typically like to back butter first because I put the thin set down on the floor. And now I'm going to trowel out the thin set. Now you'll notice I already put a line I scribed from when we did the layout. So that's where this first tile is going to go along. And let's see. When you put thin set, it's important that it be all in straight lines, not arcing, because you don't want to capture air below the thin set. And if it's in straight lines, that is the best way to not have air get trapped in the thin set. Okay, so I'm just laying out, I don't know, like about 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch up to my line, like that. Okay. All right. Then I'm going to use my notch trowel, and as I said, trowel all in one direction, like this. Now, do you see how that stands up beautifully in rows? That is evidence of a good thin set mix right there. Nice job. All right, and then I'm going to put this in. Beautiful. Dang, I do nice work. Okay, so we're going to take our tile and I'm going to lay this tile in the thin set. And I'm going to put in my spacers. Pretty much one on each corner. Like that. And that. And that. And this helps keep it off the floor slightly, maybe 1/8 of an inch. So it gives the thin set area to spread out. And now I'm going to wiggle the tile perpendicular to the thin set grooves, like this, to kind of get those set and just kind of mixed in with each other and be a nice bond to the floor. And then I'm going to pull my tile to my straight line that I drew before. When you're using the thin set, you don't have to feel like you're in a rush. Like, oh, I gotta get all of this used up before it goes bad, because it'll stay usable for quite a while. I'm gonna estimate maybe 45 minutes at least. So I'm not in a rush with that. A little downward pressure, the wiggle. Then I'm going to see my straight edge now, how it's kind of walking away from that line. That tells me it's not in there the way I want it. I'm going to twist it a little bit until it's right on the money. Perfect. Beautiful job. All right, so then it's time for tile buttering number 2, and then we will show you how this leveling system works, but I won't bore you with the second buttering. Okay, we are almost ready to place our second tile. I wanted to show you here that I've got an area that kind of got starved of the thin set. It just it didn't leave my nice 3/8 inch groove that I like. So I'm gonna redo that area, because I don't want any area of this tile that's starved for thin set. All of it has to have the 3/8 not much fun to dig out thin set between tiles. So I found it's best not to have one of these grooves of thin set right at a grout joint, because it just messes up when you want to grout. So I'm going to just bring it in from that edge a bit, like that. That's just a user tip, okay? We've got the tile back buttered and mess up the wall. And we are going to lay this in there. At this point you might think, how does this pattern look against that one, if you care, and figure out if you like that look. So I'm going to put this one in here, and let's see. Remember, we have a straight line we're trying to accomplish. Hard to see the pencil line with all the thin set. So we have to use our straight edge. And forgot about the edge there with the thin set. Okay, and then we'll see how we're doing with our line. It really matters that it's nice and straight for these first couple tiles, because it sets the entire pattern. And I'm just pushing in a little bit on this tile to get this straight edge parallel with my pencil line, and the two in alignment. Okay, and then my wiggle. Actually, should have wiggled first, then aligned. Okay. Press down. And the thing I wanted to emphasize is to have a bucket of water and a sponge on hand so that you can keep these tiles clean of thin set. And I gotta go get that. So we'll stop here. Okay, I've got my bucket and my sponge. And I just want to keep these tiles clean of thin set, because you know, it's just gonna harden and be harder to take off later. Tiles are hard because there's so much pattern about it. It's hard to know where thin set is. Okay, then I would like to take this off the wall before it hardens. Afraid to remove things like this. You can always put some back, right? On this note, I like these kind of buckets because they have like an edge you can clean your tools on. Okay, also, I like to have an 1/8 inch screwdriver around to clean out my grout joints. And I just use it as a scraper, like this, because I want this open for my grout. And it comes out real easy when it's wet. But when it's dry, you gotta saw it out like with a grout saw like this. So it's much more difficult. Let's make sure all of these spacers are nice and tight. And now I'm going to show you this leveling system. Here's my wedge, and I'm going to insert it in this slot. And the idea is we're just going to tighten it, and it puts the two top planes and top surfaces in the plane. Now you can buy one of these fancy tools. They're about $25. I think it's optional personally, because you can push this in, pull it back, push in, pull it back, and you can get them tight by hand just fine. But I have one of these, so I'm going to use it. Beautiful. And then I need another wedge. I'll ask my assistant to give me one. Over there. Sorry about that. And we'll put one over here. And that one actually kind of separated my grout joint out a little bit. That happens a lot, I noticed. So what I like to do is be able to push those back together. And I was going to mention I like to keep a 1/4 inch gap here so that I can get in here and kind of adjust things like this before the grout sets up. The thin set sets up rather. And that 1/4 inch gap allows me to get a tool in here like this. Actually, I like to use a flat bar in this part if I had it, but I don't right now. Got my line looking good. Tile surfaces are clean. Got the spacers on every edge. It's looking good. Now, how I'm going to progress is I'm going to probably lay these two tiles and then continue there, and then I'll come back over here and cut out for this toilet opening. So stay tuned for that. Okay, I decided I would lay this tile in first because I want a nice straight line going here. And I noticed that under this corner starved a little bit for thinset. So I just wanted to show you that all I do when that happens is I pack some in like this. And it fills it beautifully. Okay. Then I'll stop here, so I'm going to just pick up all this thin set. Put it down and pick it up. Doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt anything. So I'm gonna scrape it down and make sure I don't get it on top of my spacer, because then it's not the same thickness as all the others. Clean all this up. And of course we want to keep our tiles clean like that. And I need to clean out my grout joints. it's so easy to do while it's wet. And it's so much more work when it dries. 1/8" screwdriver. Get all that out of there. These are 1/8" grout joints, by the way. They sometimes have, 1/4" grout joints, or you can have them larger, but I think what people find is it's just an area for dirt to collect, and they stain, they don't look nice after a while. So these are probably about as thin as you're going to get with this style tile, which are 1/8 inch, or the thickness of this little spacer here. And they're real clean looking, real pretty. So nice thin grout joints are recommended by Do-It-Yourself Dave. Alright, next we're going to start tiling that and work out this way. Stay tuned. What I wanted to show is that sometimes when you put these levelers on, it tends to want to open up the grout joint slightly. And so a way to just keep them tight is get a block of wood and just kind of marry them back together. Also, just wanted to comment that keeping this grout line really clean in here will be important later when you go back to do the grouting. Sometimes it gets a little bit of this thin set in there, and then you don't have a nice clean line anymore. So if you just make sure you got a really nice clean sharp line there, you'll do yourself a favor. Well, you can see we've come to the place where we have to cut our first tile, and it is for the toilet drain. And what I'm going to try to do is just cut it so it's within an inch of that white flange, and I will show you how we're going to do that. But first I'm going to lay out my little semicircle as to where I'm going to make that cut. Okay, we're ready to cut out the hole for the toilet, and realize that the toilet extends quite a ways past this flange and way out here, so we really have a lot of leeway for where we do these cuts. But I'm just going to try to follow that path by making plunge cuts. And my only tip here is to be really gentle and not push too hard, because it can crack the ceramic tile. This is an angle grinder with a special blade that's used for cutting ceramic tile, and highly recommend having one of these for this type of work. Okay, normally this is a wet saw, so I'm just going to make the area kind of wet, otherwise you just breathe a lot of dust. I've got hearing protection on and eye protection, and here we go. Well, as you can see, it broke here because I wasn't being as gentle as I needed to be, but it's going to be covered by the toilet, so I'm not too concerned about it. Anyway, that is how you cut out for a toilet flange. And if it happens to be in the middle, it's okay, you just keep doing plunge cuts all the way around, real gentle, and cut out your hole. Okay, we are at the step where we need to cut our first tile. And this is a wet saw because there's water in it. The blade spins through water and spins up water into the cut area. So that's why they call it a wet saw. Now, it's an 18-inch tile. I want a piece 11 1/4. And this only goes out to a 10-inch cut. So I'm going to cut with the waist side to remove that, and it'll leave me 11 1/4 on that side. Good idea, eh? So let's set our fence up. Again, it's just like cutting with a table saw. Pretty amazing. I'm going to put this down because it tends to splash a lot of water up. And I just realized I don't have the thing plugged in. So we'll take care of that in a second. And, all right, let's get this cut. Just apply firm, easy pressure, even pressure. Not rush it too much. And, let's see what we get. Things to note is that it's real prone to chipping out the very back edge, and you need to be careful about that. On this particular saw, this table is slightly lower than that one, and it tends to want to fall down and break that off. It happens. Also, you'll notice it does a little bit of chipping on the top, not too bad, but you want to have the pretty side up for sure when you cut these. Cuts like a table saw with wood. Okay. Stop. Okay, I ended up recutting that back tile because it seemed that it was going to show when the toilet was on it. Also, I have dry fit the other two tiles, the other tiles that make up the toilet hole. So it's all in there as dry fit only, and now that I confirm that it fits, I'm going to go ahead and put in my thin set and finish it off. Okay. You'll recall that I spoke about the bathroom that I did earlier, which was in the shape of a Z. So I want to explain a little bit about my rationale about how I laid this out. First of all, let's take a walk through here and you can see how things look. So it comes about 8 feet this way, and it takes a left turn, and then back into a tiny little tub area. No, toilet area. Okay. So what was my strategy in laying out this floor? What I did is I thought to myself, how can I minimize the amount of cuts, like on the other bathroom, and where is the most visible wall line? Okay, over in here we're going to have the sink bases will be mounted in here, so that's not really a visible wall. this nice long wall line here that I thought, okay, that's perfect. So what I did was I did a little layout to see that I could use 3 full tiles and then a short 6-inch tile underneath where the vanities would be. So that worked out good. Then I chose this wall line to be basically a grout line, okay? And I laid in this row of tiles first. Now it's interesting because you got to start really at the very back, lay all the tiles, and then when it comes out to the door, everything's supposed to line up. So that was quite a challenge. So what I did was create this line first, lay these tiles, and then I took my framing square and established a grout line through here that allowed me to keep full tiles through here. Was really careful about making that 90 degrees. Scribe my line all the way back to this wall. And then I did another 90-degree turn to establish this grout line, not depending on the walls to be parallel with each other or at 90 degrees in the back. So everything gets laid out to these scribed 90-degree lines. You'll see here I had to continue this full tile here. That made for about 11-inch tile in here, and then about a 3-inch tile in here. It all flows beautifully, as you can see, as we work our grout lines all the way out to the door. So that's some of the strategy I used in laying out this very difficult bathroom. Okay, we're back in the simple bathroom again, and our thin set has had a night to dry. Everything's nice and set up. So now we get rid of all of these levelers. How do you do that? Well, it's a real kick. You just kick them off like that, and that, and that, and that, and that. And I think you get the idea. It works a little bit better if you hit them from the side like that. And they break off below level of the floor. The wedges are reusable. And the spacers break and this part stays under the tile forever. We'll clean up this little mess and then we're going to prepare for grouting and then do the grouting. Okay, we're ready to prepare for grouting. Why don't we just grout? Because we have thin set in the grout lines in places that we need to first clean out. So I'm going to use this grout saw for this, and it's got a blade for cleaning out grout. By the way, these work really nice to clean up grout lines. If you have a lot of mold just sticking in the grout line, you can clean them up by scraping a little bit off with this type of tool. No extra charge for that. All right, so here is an example of some thin set that if I didn't take it out, when I put in my brown grout, I would see a gray spot. Bad idea. So I'm just going to scrape it out with this guy. And even though I'm below the surface here, I would really like to get it as deep as I can. And I'm going to clean out that whole line. Okay?
You should scratch the tire.
All right. Now over here,
Scratch the tire.
I have kind of a spot that's really up high. This was right over a wedge or a leveling system, and I didn't get that taken out with the screwdriver like I would have liked to. So when it was really wet, it would come out easy, and now it doesn't come out so easy. But no issues, it still comes out. You just gotta work harder at it. Okay? And I mentioned about making sure you have a nice clean line here. So this is a good opportunity to take off any thin set that's kind of crept up on top of the tile as well. And good way to do that is with a wet sponge, which I forgot to bring. Okay, so we're going to do all of our grout lines nice and clean. We're going to vacuum them out so that there's no debris in them. And then we're going to do our grouting. Okay, we are ready to mix up our grout. And this particular grout comes in a base of white, and then you add a color packet to it. And it says in the instructions that 2 of these packets are used for one 25-pound bag. Well, I only have 1 of these left and half the bag, so that's the right mixture. And I'm going to pre-mix the powder at least before I mix up the grout itself with water. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want a consistent color of the grout. Oops. Package in a package, what a concept. And if I mix it dry, it's going to be mixed consistently, and I don't have to then mix up all of it wet. I can save some for patching up or for another bathroom, etc. So I'm just gonna kind of mix it together so it's just kind of tan now instead of white. And then I'll just mix some up with water, similar to how I mixed the thin set. No rocket science there. Again, we're gonna try for a consistency of peanut butter. There are some excellent YouTube videos on mixing grout as to what consistency to use. And from a YouTube video, I learned that you have to mix it and then let it set. I think they said for 5 minutes before you apply it. Not sure what that does, but that's what they said, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, next we go to applying the grout. Okay, we're ready for the grout step. And I've mixed up my grout. You'll notice that the color we chose was sandstone, and it's a bit darker when it's wet, but it will dry lighter, so just keep that in mind. In preparation for this step, I have 2 5-gallon buckets filled with nice clean water and a sponge in each bucket. and that is to keep the tile clean. So what I'm going to do using my grout float with the rubber surface is scoop out some grout, and I'm going to press it into the cracks, the grout cracks, okay? Using the short end. I'm just gonna press and make kind of a mess doing it. I don't want to have any of these grout lines that are starved for grout. I'm pretty much pressing pretty firmly right down into the grout joint. Grouting actually goes pretty fast compared to tiling, at least. Well, an interesting thing happened when I was shooting this video. I got a phone call during the shoot and it kicked out the video. My brother didn't notice that, so I didn't get the remainder of my grouting lesson in. So what I'm going to do is finish with a little mock demo of the grouting cleanup. Now, when I left you, we were pressing the grout into the gaps, and that's when the video cut out. But the next step is to trowel in the grout, and you will use a grout trowel for this step. I can't happen to find mine, but this will demonstrate at least what needs to be done. So with this step, you will trowel in the grout with a diagonal motion like this after you've packed it in. You don't want to go parallel to the grout joints because that can dig out the grout. Always at an angle to the grout joints, okay? So let's say we did that. That looks good. Then always have your water on hand. And the one tip that I got from a professional tiler is have lots of these buckets and keep the water really clean, because that's the way to keep your tiles clean of grout. Okay, and then we're just going to wipe it off. I found that using just a single motion works good, like this. And then rinse your grout off. Probably don't want big puddles on here like I did. And the idea is just keep your tiles clean so it doesn't haze over with the grout. Okay? Another tip, I'll leave that for now, is to use a dry cloth and just kind of buff the surfaces that had the haze on them, and keep your tile really clean, and then you won't have to work to wipe off the haze after it's all dry. Okay? Keep the buckets coming and the water clean. It's good to have a partner helping you with this. And use these specialty sponges that are very rigid and designed for tiling and grout. Thanks for your willingness to be flexible with me here.
Okay, interesting little sidelight. While I was doing my tile job, we had the living area be done with professional tile people. And just a note that they did not use that tool to press in any of their wedges. They just pushed all of them in by hand, and they did not take time to clean off any of the thin set from the tile surfaces, like I emphasized. So probably what they'll do is just wash it off after the fact. And they're using kind of a pretty wood colored tile, about 9 inches wide for their work. So I just wanted to mention that, something I learned when I talked with them. Also, I should mention that they cut their tile with a tool that scores the face with a diamond edge, and then it just snaps the tiles instead of using the tile saw like I use. It was a lot faster, and I was impressed. The person demonstrated to me that they could even take off 1 inch of width on a tile. It was very accurate, so just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
Well, fellow YouTubers, the time has come to reinstall the toilet. Couple of tips on this reinstall job. First is clean your flange really nice so we get a proper seal with the wax ring. I purchased a new bolt set, which I highly recommend you doing. And then I purchased some new caps and a new extra thick wax ring. Okay, so I got all my supplies here, and we'll get this back together. One of the things I wanted to mention is that these bolts, these toggle bolts, or flange bolts they're called, come with different snap off settings for different heights, because they don't want to be too high to get these covers on them. In my case, I want to cut it off at the lowest flange, or the lowest cut region, and they don't snap like it says they do. In fact, don't try doing that on your toilet, because you can break your porcelain real easy. So I'm going to take it to the garage and cut it with a hacksaw. Okay, I told you I was going to give you user tips along the way, and I forgot about one. And that is when you cut the bolts, pre-install the hex nut, because we tend to mess up the threads and with the cutting operation. And if you have the nut pre-installed, you can back it out over that area, and it will clean up the threads, kind of like a tap and die set would, if you know what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna just run that off over those, and that'll clean up the threads. It'll make it easier to start. Alright, now we're going to install our flange bolts on the flange. There's these little plastic washers, very useful little things. And I can put that on here. I suppose you can tell I've been painting today. Alright, and these are just going to help hold the tank bolts, or the flange bolts in place. And I'm going to pre-install them at about 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Straight across from each other. Get them to stand up nice and firm. And I forgot to mention, you see how these heads have a flat on them? Well, I don't know why they do that, but I like to make sure those flats are not in alignment with the slot, because then they're just weaker as it is. I'm going to take out my temporary plug, which has been keeping the sewer gases at bay, and I'm going to take off my brand new extra thick wax ring and install it on the flange with the funnel pointing down like that. Okay, and I want these tank bolts or flange bolts to be standing straight up and down because I am about to place the toilet over those and hope that everything lines up. So you can zoom out a little bit. And this is where I'm going to do my little weightlifting routine again. I like to grab it right about here and put my elbows on my knees and go like that. And then I'm just kind of eyeballing where that bolt is. About centered in my slot. And the weight of the toilet pushes down, crushing that wax ring nicely. At this point, I'm just adjusting the toilet so it looks approximately parallel to the wall. And then we're going to add our washer on both sides. I'll just demonstrate it on one side for the video. I always forget this little step. These are the decorative covers, and you may notice it says this side up. That's a good thing to pay attention to. And it looks like my tank bolts are very close to being too short, except it's not. Come on, baby. Get on there. And then I'm going to tighten it. Now, how much do you tighten it? Well, you don't want to tighten it so much that it cracks the porcelain. That'd be bad. So just get it snug. But it's important that it's tight enough that the toilet doesn't shift around. Notice that the toilet is sitting directly on the new tile floor. Eventually we're going to come back and add a bead of caulk in here, tub and tile caulk, silicone, white. And then I'm going to add this pretty cap and it will snap in place. And there you have it. A beautiful professional job. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then I'm simply going to reattach my supply line and turn on the water and make sure there's no leaks. And that is our toilet install. Okay, we are done with our floor, and it looks pretty good. Turned out nice. All the tiles are level with each other because we use those leveling systems. I just want to mention that when the tilers came in to lay this tile, I know it looks like wood, but it's actually tile. They were very careful to make sure that this was level with our floor. So even if they had to reduce the amount of thin set and slope it down slightly, they always made sure this is the same level as this floor. Thanks for watching, and I hope to have more YouTube videos in the future with Do-It-Yourself Dave.